Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Pariprajaka Stotra Shri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamana Maya Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna,
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna,
glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Om
Krishna,
Premanande.
Hare
Hari
Hare
Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare.
Welcome everyone to Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. Today is April 10th, 2023, and we're reading in the third canto, 15th chapter, Description of the Kingdom of God. Tonight we're starting with text number 47. That's where my bookmark is. As always, we're eager to hear everyone's comments and questions, so you can use the raise hand feature or unmute yourself and speak when Maharaj asks for questions, or you can type your comments into the chat window. We ask that you don't send any chat messages as Maharaj is reading something there, because it makes it more difficult to read them. At the end of class, I will post some helpful links that you can share with your friends so they can attend as well. We're glad that you could join us from still London, Maharaj?
Leicester.
Leicester, okay. Is that where,
Where Pradumna is,
Okay.
and who else is there? Many other devotees. And the deities are Radha Madhav. And
Jai. Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you, Tulsi Priya. There may be connectivity issues today. If you see a drop in quality, a significant drop, let me know, and we'll do something.
I mentioned it in the chat. I don't know if you saw it, but it dropped out a little bit while you were doing the prayers.
Well, if it persists, let me know.
Okay.
I can switch to my phone, or I can do something else. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kamam Bhavasva Vijanair Nidaye Shunastach Cheto Livad Yadinute Padayorameta Vachas Tulasi Vadyati Tengri Shobha Uryeta Te Gunaganair Yadikar Narandraha. O Lord, we pray that you let us be born in any hellish condition of life, just as long as our hearts and minds are always engaged in the service of your lotus feet. Our words are made beautiful by speaking of your activities, just as tulsi leaves are beautified when offered unto your lotus feet, and as long as our ears are always filled with the chanting of your transcendental qualities. Purport: the four sages now offered their humility to the personality of Godhead because of their having been haughty in cursing two other devotees of the Lord. Jai and Vijay, the two doorkeepers who checked them from entering the Vaikuntha planet, were certainly offenders, but as Vaishnavas, the four sages should not have cursed them in anger. After the incident, they became conscious that they had done wrong by cursing the devotees of the Lord. And they prayed to the Lord that even in the hellish condition of life, their minds might not be distracted from the engagement of service to the lotus feet of Lord Narayan. Those who are devotees of the Lord are not afraid of any condition of life, provided there is constant engagement in the service of the Lord. It is said of the Narayana Para, or those who are devotees of Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nakutashchana Bhibhyati. They are not afraid of entering a hellish condition. For since they are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, heaven or hell is the same for them. In material life, both heaven and hell are one and the same because they're material. In either place, there's no engagement in the Lord's service. Therefore, those who are engaged in the service of the Lord see no distinction between heaven and hell. It is only the materialists who prefer one to the other. These four devotees prayed to the Lord that although they might go to hell because they had cursed devotees, they might not forget the service of the Lord. Well, let's pause here. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Bhupakoda Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parishana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Sapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The Kumars were conscious that they had committed an offense to the doorkeepers. The doorkeepers had committed an offense, but the Kumars had also committed an offense. And therefore, as Vaishnavas, they regretted their error. And they thought, well, we may go to hell, but hell is all right as long as we can be engaged in devotional service. There's a nice verse in the 10th canto. Nanda Maharaj is speaking to Uddhava when Uddhava is about to leave Vrindavan after visiting for some time. And Nanda Maharaj says, wherever I may go, or we and the inhabitants of Vrindavan, wherever we may go in this world, wherever we may wander on account of our past fruitive activities, may our minds always be engaged in thinking of Krishna. May our words always be glorifying Krishna. And may our bodies always be engaged in the service of Krishna. Maybe, Praveen, you can find that verse. So here, the same thought that even if we go to hell, if we're engaged in devotional service, Heaven, hell, anywhere is fine. And Prabhupada points out for the materialists, whether they go to heaven or they go to hell, it's all hell, because there's no Krishna consciousness. Materialists make a distinction. This is heaven, this is hell. But the devotees see heaven or hell as both being hellish. And the Brahmajyoti also as being a hellish destination, because there's no devotional service there. Then Prabhupada cites the verse, Narayana para sarve nakutaschana bhipyati svarga pavarga nadakeshvapi tulyarta darshanaha. The devotees see everywhere as being the same, and so they're not afraid of going anywhere. Wherever we go, if we can be engaged in the service of Krishna, that's a good position. And there's a question here from Saraswati. Kumar's had a somewhat haughty personality, and every individual has their own personality traits, both in the liberated and conditioned state. But is the particular personality exhibited by conditioned souls indicative of a predisposition to their eternal personality? No. Our conditioned nature is assumed from the three qualities of material nature. So one may be, say, of a rough nature in this life because of the subtle body he's obtained. That doesn't mean that when he goes to the spiritual world, he'll be sort of a rough-natured person in Krishna Lila, or that if one is very humble and meek in this life, then he'll be like a right-wing gopi. Is it right wing or left wing? Very compliant. No, it's not correlated. It's not correlated. Even one may be a man in this life and a woman in the spiritual world, or vice versa. So you can't judge by the material body, gross or subtle. That's a mistake. The devotee shouldn't be seen in terms of the body. The devotee should be seen from the platform of pure devotional service. Body is temporary. And here's the verse I was thinking of, 10:47-67. Karmabhir brahmyamana nam yatra bishvarechchaya mangala charitar dhanai pratirna Krishna ishade. Wherever we are made to wander about this world by the Supreme Lord's will, in accordance with the reactions to our fruit of works, may our good works and charity always grant us love for Lord Krishna. I think there are two verses, and the other one may be relevant also. Wherever we're made to wander, this is Nanda Maharaj, the eternal father of Krishna, but he's humbly saying, wherever we're made to wander about by the Supreme Lord's will, in accordance with the reactions of our fruit of works. Mangala Charitar Dhanai. If we've ever done anything auspicious, if we've ever given charity according to the regulative principles, may we be engaged in Krishna's service. Yes, this is the next verse. May our mental functions always take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. Manaso Vrityo Nasyu Krishna Padam Bujashraya Vacho Bidtayanir Nam Nam Kayastu Pravanadishu. Yes, that's the next verse, previous verse. None in the cowards. May our mental functions always take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. May our words always chant his names. And may our bodies always bow down to him and serve him. Yes. All right, anything else here? These four devotees, the Kumaras, prayed to the Lord that although they might go to hell because they had cursed devotees, they might not forget the service of the Lord. The transcendental loving service of the Lord is performed in three ways: with the body, with the mind, and with words. Here the sages pray that their words may always be engaged in glorifying the Supreme Lord. One may speak very nicely with ornamental language, or one may be expert at controlled grammatical presentation. But if one's words are not engaged in the service of the Lord, they have no flavor and no actual use. The example is given here of tulsi leaves. The tulsi leaf is very useful, even from the medicinal or antiseptic point of view. It is considered sacred and is offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. The tulsi leaf has numerous good qualities, but if it were not offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, tulsi could not be of much value or importance. Similarly, one may speak very nicely from the rhetorical or grammatical point of view, which may be very much appreciated by a materialistic audience. But if one's words are not offered to the service of the Lord, they're useless. The holes of the ear are very small and can be filled with any insignificant sound. So how can they receive as great a vibration as the glorification of the Lord? The answer is that the holes of the ears are like the sky. As the sky can never be filled up, the quality of the ear is such that one may go on pouring in vibrations of various kinds, yet it is capable of receiving more and more vibrations. A devotee, a devotee is not afraid of going to hell if he has the opportunity to hear the glories of the Lord constantly. This is the advantage of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One may be put in any condition, but God gives him the prerogative to chant Hare Krishna. In any condition of life, if one goes on chanting, he will never be unhappy. So this specific quality of the ear is noted. The ear is very small. The holes of the ear are tiny, but you can pour as much as you want into the ear. And that what's poured in can be material, and it may be very gorgeous. It may be, Shakespeare is incredible in his rhetorical figures and his poetry in so many ways. But at the end of the day, if there's no Krishna consciousness, then what is the use of all these beautiful vibrations, all these elegantly constructed or figures? If there's no Krishna, then finally there's no taste, there's no value, there's no meaning. and Prabhupada gives the example of tulsi. It may be a nice medicinal plant, but if it's not, if it weren't offered to the lotus feet of Krishna, tulsi would be insignificant. But because it's offered to Krishna, the tulsi plant is so important. So we can pour any amount of rubbish into the ear, or the advantage of the ear is that it can accommodate as much Krishna Katha as we want to put into it, or as much chanting of the holy name as we want to put into it. So the ears should be used in this way. In Vishwanath's commentary, he presents sort of a challenge to the Kumars. Well, what is it? Are you now fixed in pure bhakti, or are you after liberation? Come on, tell us. And they say, what is the use of liberation? We don't want that. We want to be engaged in devotional service. If it were possible to be born in hell with bhakti, certainly hell with bhakti would be preferable to liberation. In liberation, no service. And about the ears, they say, our ears should be filled with the glorification of your lotus feet, so that they can't, so that nothing else can enter the ears. That will be nice. If we hear just a little bit about the qualities of the Lord, that will be the right use for the ears. All right, is there anything else here? Next verse. Pradushchakarta yaridam puruhu tarupam tenesha nirvritim avapuralam drisho naha tasmaidam bhagavate nama idvitema yonatmanam duradeyo bhagavan pratitaha. O Lord, we therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your eternal form as the personality of Godhead, which you have so kindly manifested before us. Your supreme eternal form cannot be seen by unfortunate, less intelligent persons, but we are so much satisfied in our mind and vision to see it. Purport. The four sages were impersonalists in the beginning of their spiritual life, but afterwards, by the grace of their father and spiritual master, Brahma, they understood the eternal spiritual form of the Lord and felt completely satisfied. In other words, the transcendentalists who aspire to the impersonal Brahma or localized Paramatma are not fully satisfied and still hanker for more. Even if they are satisfied in their minds, still, transcendentally, their eyes are not satisfied. But as soon as such persons come to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're satisfied in all respects. In other words, they become devotees and want to see the form of the Lord continually. It is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that one who has developed transcendental love of Krishna by smearing his eyes with the ointment of love sees constantly the eternal form of the Lord. The particular word used in this connection, anatmanam, signifies those who have no control over the mind and senses, and who therefore speculate and want to become one with the Lord. Such persons cannot have the pleasure of seeing the eternal form of the Lord. For the impersonalists and the so-called yogis, the Lord is always hidden by the curtain of Yoga Maya. Bhagavad Gita says that even when Lord Krishna was seen by everyone while he was present on the surface of the earth, the impersonalists and the so-called yogis could not see him because they were devoid of devotional eyesight. The theory of the impersonalists and so-called yogis is that the Supreme Lord assumes a particular form when he comes in touch with Maya, although actually he has no form. This very conception of the impersonalists and so-called yogis checks them from seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is. The Lord, therefore, is always beyond the sight of such non-devotees. The four sages felt so much obliged to the Lord that they offered their respectful obeisances unto him again and again. It wouldn't be expected that impersonalists would see the Lord. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita. The impersonalists and the yogis influenced by impersonal ideas can't see the Lord as he is because they don't have devotion for the Lord. Bhaktyamam abhijanati. Yavan yaschasmi tattvata. The Lord can only be seen by devotional service. So the Kumars considered themselves very fortunate that they were able to see Krishna. And by seeing Krishna, they were completely satisfied. The impersonalists may have some abstract idea of the Lord, but they won't be satisfied because they're not inclined to the devotional service of the Lord. Or if they perform some devotional service, it's with the idea that they'll transcend the platform where there are qualities and forms and so on, and they'll achieve the real truth, the impersonal Brahma, from which the form of the Lord has been projected. But here, the Kumars attained perfection in seeing the transcendental form of the Lord. So they were feeling obliged to the Lord.
I think
Now let's see what's in the chat box. Saraswati, it's a major weakness when one is enthusiastic to hear Krishna Katha, but retention becomes a problem quite often. Does this retention ability improve as we become more purified? Well, let's deal with that question first. I don't know. I don't know. If it does, it should. By hearing again and again and again, we should remember gradually something should sink in by repeated hearing. Those who are fortunate, they'll hear once. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as a Shrutidhar, could hear once and remember. He heard the verses spoken by the Keshav Kashmir, was able to to recite them back to him, even though the poet had recited them like the wind. So those who are fortunate may be blessed with excellent memory. Of course, even materially, some people are just blessed with. I had a cousin, he could remember everything. There were places he and I had been together, things we'd done together. I didn't remember being there. I didn't remember anything. He remembered the names, the dates, the people, the places, the things that had happened. If he remembered something, he'd remember what it smelled like, what it felt like. He just had this incredible memory. Incredible memory. But it was all mundane. It was a material benediction and also a material curse, because he couldn't turn it off. He'd remember things, whether he liked it or not. So it's a material, from one point of view, a material capability which one might or might not have. But if one has it and one is able to remember Krishna, then that's the perfection of memory. And it may be that by repeated hearing, one's memory improves. But even worst case, if we have like very little retention, but we go on hearing about Krishna again and again, still will be all right. I'm inventing a metaphor, but it seems to work. If you have a pot and it's leaking, but you keep filling it up, even though it's leaking, it'll stay full. So even though our memories may leak, even though we may not retain what we've heard, if we go on hearing about Krishna, even if we don't remember, there'll always be Krishna in our minds. Those of us who have miserable memories, whose memories are of poor strength, could perhaps take some comfort from that thought. Also, Saraswati says, a devotee was commenting how there seemed to be two warring factions inside the subtle body, which can end up weakening the devotee's resolve in always choosing bhakti above all else. How can we stop this turbulence of subtle body and strengthen the resolve to choose bhakti? Well, both things are there. That's Anicchana Pivarshneya Baladiva Niyojita. Arjuna asked Krishna, why is it that even if one desires to act according to one's duty, sometimes even against one's will, one is carried away? And Krishna says, Kamesha Krodesha, on account of lust and anger. So both things are there. Or what is that? Anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. The person whose mind's controlled lives always with the best friend, and if it's uncontrolled, the worst enemy. So the mind has to be controlled by being engaged in the service of Krishna. The two tendencies are there, otherwise there'd be no point of these instructions. Control the mind, think of Krishna. If there was no counter tendency, we wouldn't even need the advice. We just automatically, spontaneously, unerringly think of Krishna. But we don't. We get pretty adorable, because of weakness of heart. We drift off. And so we need to be instructed, and we need a practical process to fix the mind. So all of these methods of devotional service, Sevan Mukhi Jivados, starting with the tongue, starting with chanting Hare Krishna, accepting only Krishna Prasadam, then hearing about Krishna and remembering Krishna and so on, all of this is meant to strengthen the mind or strengthen our inclination toward devotional service, so that the other side will lose the war. There may be two warring factions, but if one strengthens bhakti by following the regulative principles under the direction of the spiritual master and developing an attraction for Krishna by hearing and chanting, then one will win. Between the two factions, the bhakti faction will come out victorious. Rabin quotes, Muktim Sadati Karhichit Smana Bhakti Yogam. Those engaged in getting the Lord's favor attain liberation very easily, but he does not very easily give the opportunity to render direct service to him. Yes, the Kumar's got that opportunity. Liberation, that seemed like a great achievement, but Krishna says that is not such a thing. To be engaged in the service of Krishna. Panchatattva, should we understand that the impersonalists who want to become one with the Lord have no control over the mind and senses? We normally hear how genuine impersonalists are very sense-controlled, complete celibates, etc. What does Srila Prabhupada mean when he cites their lack of control of their mind and senses? The anatmanam, anatmanas tu shatruve, not controlled. Certainly, as you've said, I could look for exactly where Prabhupada says that, not controlled. Finally, let's see. Yeah. No control over the mind and senses, and therefore speculate and want to become one with the Lord. In the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we see that at a certain point, Gop Kumar enters the region of liberation, and he almost merges with the Lord. He almost, is the power of liberation, the attraction of liberation is so strong that almost merges, as if controlled by that powerful force of liberation. But his inherent tendency to serve the Lord saves him from that hellish destination, Kaivalyam Narakayate. So yes, materially speaking, we always hear that great sages are expert in controlling the senses, and therefore they're glorified for that. But finally, if they don't engage in the service of Krishna, then their sense control is only relative, and they still lose themselves. Anatmana. In Buddhism, what is that term? It's the same thing. I've forgotten the term they use, but it means the same thing, that there's no self. Anatma. Not. So the impersonalists, despite their great powers of self-control, lose themselves. Anatma, they lose their individual personalities. They lose their individual identities. So finally, therefore they fall victim to what Prabhupada calls the last snare of Maya. In spite of their great control over the mind and senses, the mind gets the better of them in the form of this notion of becoming one with the Lord. Hope that helps. Nantashesh says, if we fill up the ears with other irrelevant stuff, that interferes with the memory. Yes, experts in study of memory say that memory has to do not just with having been there and seen that. Dhanadhar Maharaj, I think, brought this up in a recent newsletter of his. It has to do not just with having been there and seen that, but where was your attention? Something may have been happening, but if our attention wasn't on it, then it doesn't register. Or someone's speaking, but we're not paying attention. And what did he say? I don't know. I don't know. So memory has to do very much with attention. When we're really focused on something, then we remember it. And when it's just peripheral to our attention, we may remember or not remember. So when we're distracted, when our attention is on other things, then that interferes with our memory. I guess you could do a scientific experiment, have some simple reading going on and then have all these super distractions going on and see if someone remembers the simple thing that was read, or to what extent one does. I suspect that the experiment would show that when we're distracted, our memory takes a hit. On the Bhagavatam, it's said that these topics other than Krishna Katha act like reeds on the side of a pool that suck up the water in the pool. It's not just that when we're hearing something unrelated to Krishna, we're wasting time, that it's time not used in hearing of Krishna, but rather it's time used in such a way that it weakens our memory of Krishna. Our minds become cluttered with these other things. And so where's the space for remembering Krishna? Therefore, Krishna says, Ekeha Kurunandana. One should make the mind one-pointed. One should fix the mind. Very important principle, and not so easy. There's so many interesting and attractive and compelling things, whether it's carnal interest or intellectual interest or rhetorical interest or musical interest or this or that. We become distracted. So one has to make a conscious effort, at least in the probational stage. At the perfectional stage, one always remembers Krishna. Even Bharat Maharaj at the almost perfect stage was distracted by a deer. So we have to be very diligent, very careful, so that our minds won't be pulled away. Sadhu Seva says, we know that lust, greed, and anger are considered the three gates leading to hell. Can these be used in the service of Krishna? Yes, they can. The lust can be used in the service of Krishna. Greed can be used, anger can be used. The gopis were apparently lusty, but their lust was turned toward Krishna and became the greatest expression of devotional service. One can be greedy to get more and more for the service of Krishna, or to get more and more service. And anger can be used against the non-devotees. Prabhupada cites Hanuman, who set fire to Lanka. So Krishna Kama, Krishna Krodha Kamarpane, like that. Someone may find it's a song by a verse by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if I remember. Then I might find it if I look real quick. Narottam Das Thakur. From Prema Bhakti Chandrika. Krishna Seva Kamarpane Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jane Lobha Sadhu Sange Harikatha Moha Ishtalabha Bene Mada Krishna Gunagane Nijukta Koribo Jata Tata. I will engage my lust and eagerness to serve Krishna. I'll use my anger against those envious of the devotees. I'll be greedy to hear the topics of Krishna in the association of devotees. So all of these can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. All right. We have, let's see where we are in terms of time. Well, we could either embark on the next verse, or we could look a little bit at Vishwanath's commentary to this one. Let's do that. We've become successful. You've made us successful by revealing your form. By that vision of your form, our eyes or intellects have attained bliss. You do not appear to those who do not have you, Atma, as the object of service, Anatmanam. Their Atma is taken to be not the mind, but Krishna. So Anatmanam means those who don't have Krishna as the object of service. Or you do not appear to those who, being devoid of you, Anatmana, are devoid of soul. If one is not Krishna conscious, then his soul is lost. Ye ke chatma no jana. They're just like dirt, it says. And just as the sun is difficult to see for owls, the Lord appears difficult to see for the non-devotees. Then he says, the Kumars are famous for being fixed in realization of Brahma. They're known as the jewels in the crown among all Atmaramas. And then there's a Shruti quote to that effect. When sages of this caliber offer prayers like this, one must understand the superiority of the bliss and worship of the Lord over the bliss of Brahma. These are not just dime store impersonalists. These are the crown jewel of the impersonalists. And they are offering prayers to the Lord in this way. This means that the Lord's form, name, qualities, clothing, devotees, abodes are naturally all spiritual in form. If they weren't, bhakti could not be successful. Later, in the statements of Kapila, these items are described as nirgun, without material qualities. Well, there's more, but maybe we should, let's see if there's more. The Lord is worshipped at all times. This is from Shruti. He's worshipped by the liberated and those not liberated. In relation to the great devotees, such as Prahlad and Pali, Vishnu Puran says, in the lower planets, even those who are liberated do not have bhakti. So bhakti is the supreme attainment. And thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 3rd canto, 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Description of the Kingdom of God. So we've reached the end of chapter 15. And let's see, Wednesday we'll begin with the next chapter. All right, we can stop here and have kirtan.
Gurudas Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Adanta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gokupnath Sham Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamana Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Om Premanande.
Hare Hare Hare.
Hari Hari Bo.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu.
Thank you,
Jai
everyone.
Raj Hari Bol. Oh, excuse me, Tulsi.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I can't see who's where now. Wait, my screen's set up.
That was me, Maharaj. Yeah, Hari
Oh.
Bol.
Hari Bo. Thank you, Gurudas Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Panchatattva Company.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Mukunda Charan. Kamalaki.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Please share the class links with your friends, and I hope we can see you all again on Wednesday for Srimad Bhagavatam class. Srimad
What is
Bhagavatam.
the Hare Krishna Tulsi Priya Mataji?
Yes, Mataji?
Which chapter and what? Which is the verse mentioned?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Which chapter and which verse?
We're in 16th chapter, starting at the beginning.
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki
Jai.
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 Namaste.
Hari Bo.
Ibo.